In the vast, unforgiving plains of Mongolia, a child was born into chaos. A child who would rise from nothing, no kingdom, no wealth, no power. His only possession was a spirit that refused to break. His name was Temujin, and he would become Genghis Khan, the man who forged the largest land empire in human history, reshaped civilizations, rewrote warfare, and left a legacy still felt 1,000 years later. Tonight, we journey through the real story of the man behind the legend. Temujin was born near the Khenti Mountains in 1162, under a sky heavy with winter. His birth was marked by a startling omen. He was born holding a clot of blood in his fist. For the Mongol tribes, this was a sign that foretold a destiny of greatness or of destruction. Raised in a yurt, a simple felt tent, his world was one of bitter cold, tribal conflict, and the constant struggle for survival. His mother, Holan, was a woman of incredible strength, kidnapped by his father, Yasuge, a minor clan chieftain. This was the world Temujin entered, a world of brutal tradition and breathtaking landscapes, where life was as harsh as the winter wind. When Temujin was only 9 years old, his life was shattered. His father, following tradition, took him to the lands of the Onjirat tribe to arrange a future marriage with a girl named Bert. The deal was struck, and Temujin was left to live with his future in-laws for several years. But on his journey home, Yasuge encountered a group of Tatars, old enemies of his clan. Unaware of the danger, he shared a meal with them. They recognized him and, feigning hospitality, poisoned his food. He managed to stumble home, only to die a few days later, leaving his family leaderless. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. His father's clan, seeing no value in supporting a widow and her young children, abandoned them. Holan, with Temujin and his siblings, was cast out onto the steppe to fend for themselves. This was a death sentence. His mother fought desperately to feed her children, teaching them to forage for roots, berries, and whatever small game they could catch. These years of starvation and hardship didn't break Temujin. They forged a fire inside him, a relentless will to not only survive, but to conquer the world that had discarded him. As he grew into a teenager, Temujin's life became even more precarious. The Taishad, the very clan that had abandoned his family, now saw him as a future threat. They hunted him down, capturing him and forcing him to wear a wooden collar, a heavy yoke used for slaves and prisoners. He was paraded as a trophy, humiliated and powerless. But even in chains, his mind was already working. He observed his captors, learning their routines, their weaknesses. One night, during a festival, when the guards were drunk and distracted, he saw his chance. With the moonlight guiding him, he struck his guard with the wooden collar and fled into the night. He hid in a river with only his head above the water until the search parties passed. A sympathetic witness to his capture, a man named Sorkenshira, discovered him but chose not to betray him. He helped Temujin hide and later aided his final escape. This moment was the turning point. As he ran free under the stars, Temujin made a vow: no one will ever control me again. He would be the master of his own fate. Having escaped slavery, Temujin began the long, arduous process of building his power from nothing. He understood that in the fractured world of the Mongolian steppe, loyalty was the most valuable currency. He started by seeking out his promised bride, Bert. Reconnecting with her family, he solidified the alliance his father had arranged. But soon after their marriage, disaster struck again. The Merkit tribe, rivals of his father, raided his camp and kidnapped Bert in an act of revenge. Desperate, Temujin turned to the most powerful connections he had: his father's Anda, or blood brother, a man named Togrul Khan of the Kerets. He also reached out to a childhood friend, Jamuka. Together, they amassed an army and crushed the Merkits, rescuing Bert. In the aftermath of this victory, Temujin and Jamuka reaffirmed their bond in a sacred blood oath ceremony, swearing eternal friendship. For a time, they were inseparable, their camps joined as one. But their philosophies on leadership were destined to clash. Jamuka believed in the traditional aristocratic order, while Temujin promoted followers based on skill and loyalty, regardless of their birth. This fundamental difference would soon turn these blood brothers into the bitterest of enemies. Temujin's influence grew because he offered a new kind of society. He attracted followers from all tribes, including outcasts, escaped slaves, and disillusioned warriors. He built his army not on noble lineage, but on pure merit. A talented shepherd could become a general in his army, a concept that was revolutionary and threatening to the established tribal leaders. His rivalry with Jamuka escalated into open warfare. The final confrontation came at the Battle of the 13 Sides, a brutal clash that initially ended in a stalemate but ultimately saw many of Jamuka's own men defect too. Temujin's side, drawn by his vision of unity and fairness. Over the next decade, Temujin systematically defeated every major rival on the steppe Tatars, the Naimans, and finally, his old ally Togrul and his former blood brother, Jamuka. By his 40s, he had done the unthinkable. He had united the perpetually warring Mongol tribes under a single banner. In the year 1206, he called a massive council, a Kurultai, on the banks of the Anan River, surrounded by thousands of warriors, banners waving in the wind. He was proclaimed the ruler of all the people of the felt-walled tents. He was given a new name, one that would echo through eternity: Genghis Khan, the universal ruler. The Mongol army under Genghis Khan was unlike anything the world had ever seen. It was a war machine built on speed, discipline, and terror. At its heart was the Mongol horse archer. Trained from childhood, these warriors could ride for days, sleeping in the saddle, and shoot with deadly accuracy while galloping at full speed. Their composite bows could outrange almost any other weapon of the era. But their greatest weapon was psychological. Mongol armies would often appear as if from nowhere, using lightning-fast maneuvers to surround their enemies. They used tactics like feigned retreats to lure armies into deadly traps. Before attacking a city, they would demand surrender. If a city resisted, its fate was sealed. The Mongols would show no mercy, ensuring that the next city would hear of the horror and surrender without a fight. The army was a meritocracy. Officers were promoted for skill, not birth. This ensured that the most capable men were in command, and to hold his rapidly expanding territory together. Genghis Khan created the Yam, a revolutionary communication and supply system. It was a network of relay stations with fresh horses and riders, allowing messages and intelligence to travel across the empire at a speed of up to 200 miles a day, faster than anything in the world until the telegraph. With the tribes united, Genghis Khan turned his eyes outward. His first major target was the powerful Jin dynasty of northern China. This was a formidable challenge. The Mongols were masters of the open field, but they were not experts at siege warfare. The Jin had massive, fortified cities. Yet, Genghis Khan was a master of adaptation. He learned, he captured Chinese engineers and forced them to build siege weapons for his army: catapults, battering rams, and diversionary tactics like rerouting rivers. He also exploited internal divisions, welcoming defectors from the Jin army into his own ranks. The campaign was long and brutal, but the Mongols' relentless pressure and overwhelming speed eventually broke the Jin defenses. They sacked the capital, Zhongdu, modern-day Beijing. in a conquest that sent shockwaves across Asia. The spoils of China's wealth, technology, and knowledge flowed back to Mongolia, further strengthening the Khan's growing empire. The turning point that would unleash the full fury of the Mongols upon the world came from the Welt. Genghis Khan sent a trade caravan and diplomats to the Khwarezmian Empire, a vast and wealthy sultanate stretching across modern-day Iran, Afghanistan, and Central Asia. He sought to establish peaceful trade relations, but the governor of a Khwarezmian border city, confident in his empire's strength, foolishly accused the merchants of being spies and had them executed. When Genghis sent envoys to demand the governor be handed over, the Khwarezm Shah not only refused but had the lead envoy killed. This was an unforgivable insult. Genghis Khan was said to have climbed a mountain, prayed for 3 days, and then unleashed one of the most devastating campaigns in history. He didn't just want to win, he wanted to erase Khwarezmia from the map. He divided his army into multiple forces, attacking the empire from all sides in a brilliant display of coordinated strategy. He crossed the supposedly impassable Kizilkum Desert to appear behind enemy lines, a move that completely shocked the Shah. Cities like Samarkand and Bukhara, centers of learning and culture, were razed to the ground. The campaign was an act of total war that forever reshaped Central Asia and cemented Genghis Khan's reputation as an unstoppable conqueror. But Genghis Khan's legacy is far more complex than just conquest. He was also a brilliant administrator and lawmaker. To govern his immense, multi-ethnic empire, he created a universal legal code known as the Yasa. While the exact text is lost to history, its principles are known. It outlawed kidnapping, theft, and adultery, and it demanded absolute loyalty to the Khan. But most remarkably, the Yasa established policies that were centuries ahead of their time. It granted complete religious freedom to all subjects. Christians, Muslims, and Buddhists could all practice their faith without fear of persecution, as long as they prayed for the Khan. He protected diplomats and merchants, making the roads safer than they had been in centuries. This protection revitalized the ancient Silk Road. Under the Pax Mongolica, or Mongol peace, trade, ideas, technologies, and culture flowed freely between East and West. It was a form of globalization, sparking an unprecedented exchange that would introduce things like paper money, gunpowder, and the compass to Europe, ultimately helping to fuel the Renaissance. In 1227, during his final campaign against the rebellious Western Shia kingdom, Genghis Khan died. He was around 65 years old. The exact cause of his death remains one of history's greatest mysteries. Was it an injury from falling off his horse? A wound sustained in his final battle? A sudden illness like typhus? Or was he assassinated? We may never know. His final instructions were that his death be kept a secret until the Western Shire were completely defeated. His body was returned to his homeland in Mongolia for burial. According to legend, the funeral procession killed every person and animal it encountered along the way to ensure the location of his tomb would remain secret forever. 1,000 horsemen were said to have trampled the ground to erase any trace of the burial site. To this day, the final resting place of Genghis Khan has never been found, protected by the silence of his most loyal warriors. At the time of his death, Genghis Khan had built an empire that stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea. But it was only the beginning. His sons and grandsons, like Gadai, Kublai, and Hulagu, would continue his conquests, expanding the empire to its maximum extent. From Korea to Eastern Europe, creating the largest contiguous land empire in the history of the world. His descendants would rule over China as the Yuan dynasty, over Persia as the Ilkhanate, and over Russia as the Golden Horde. The legacy of Genghis Khan is a paradox. He was responsible for brutal campaigns that took countless lives, but he also united a fractured world, created laws, fostered trade, and connected civilizations. From an abandoned child on the frozen steppe to the ruler of a world-spanning empire, Genghis Khan remains one of the most powerful and transformative figures in human history. His story is a stunning reminder that greatness can rise from the harshest beginnings, and that one person's vision, for better or worse, can reshape the world. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this journey into history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more.